Why do all great empires eventually collapse? Seriously, think about it for a second. It's one of the grandest historical questions we can possibly ask. From the Romans to the Abbasids, every massive, seemingly invincible state eventually fractures and falls. Every single one. So is it just bad luck, maybe bad leadership, or is there, perhaps, some hidden biological clock ticking away inside every human civilization? Well, welcome to our explainer. Today we're looking at a text that answers this exact question, and it does so using a scientific framework that was literally centuries ahead of its time.
Okay, let's dive right into this. We are exploring the 14th century masterpiece, the Muqaddimah, written by the brilliant scholar Ibn Khaldun. Now, the title translates simply to the introduction, mostly because it was originally meant to just be the first volume of this massive, overarching universal history. But this introduction became so profound and so revolutionary that it completely stands alone today as a foundational text. So today, we're going to unpack exactly how Ibn Khaldun essentially invented the fields of sociology, demography, and economics to figure out exactly why societies rise and fall.
So, here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the father of sociology himself. Second, redefining history. Third, the concept of asabiyya. Fourth, the life cycle of empires. Fifth, economics and urbanization. And finally, we'll wrap up with his modern legacy.
Let's start with Section 1, the father of sociology, a brief biography of a visionary. To really wrap our heads around this text, we first need to understand the world that shaped its author. You see, Ibn Khaldun wasn't just some armchair philosopher sitting in an ivory tower. He actually lived through a totally chaotic era of political upheaval, devastating plagues, and constantly shifting borders. He was born in Tunis in 1332, and from the 1350s to the 1370s, he was right in the thick of it, actively serving in various high-level political and judicial roles all across North Africa and Andalusia. I mean, we're talking about a guy who was an ambassador, a judge, and yup, even a political prisoner at times. This incredibly vast, hands-on experience with messy court intrigues and tribal politics deeply influenced his theories. Finally, in 1377, he retreated from all that political noise to write his monumental Muqaddimah. He eventually moved to Egypt, where he died in 1404. So his life was this epic journey across the Islamic world, which basically gave him a front-row seat to the actual rise and fall of major political powers.
Moving on to Section 2, redefining the science of history. The inner versus the outer truth.
All that highly practical experience I just mentioned, well, it led him to heavily, and I mean heavily, criticize the historians of his day. Ibn Khaldun noticed a massive, glaring problem with how history was being recorded. Everyone was relying on what he called outer history. This traditional method basically just focuses on the surface-level tales of kings, blindly copying past accounts, and basically just accepting ancient myths without any sort of scientific verification. He found this totally useless. So to fix it, he proposed inner history. He argued that history absolutely must be a science, one completely focused on human social organization, a concept he called Amran. We have to analyze the deep, hidden root causes of events, and we need to filter every historical claim through the strict, unforgiving lenses of logic, human nature, and physical geography.
To really prove how flawed that old outer history was, Ibn Khaldun pointed to this specific number, 600,000. Earlier, highly respected historians like Al-Masudi had just blindly recorded that the prophet Moses marched out with an army of 600,000 soldiers. Well, Ibn Khaldun pretty much scoffed at this. Applying his brand new scientific method, he pointed out that logically and geographically, this was literally impossible. A military camp of that enormous size would stretch way beyond the physical limits of the terrain. Plus, the logistics of feeding 500,000 soldiers in that specific historical period, it just didn't exist. So, by applying hard reason over just blind repetition, he completely revolutionized historical analysis.
That brings us to Section 3, asabiyya and social cohesion, the engine of political power. So, if history isn't just a list of kings doing things, what actually drives it forward? Well, it all comes down to an absolutely crucial term that you definitely need to know. Asabiyya. It roughly translates to social cohesion or group solidarity. Ibn Khaldun explains that, look, humans just cannot survive alone. We absolutely must cooperate to secure basic food and defense. Asabiyya is that essential bond, originally derived from deep blood ties and kinship, that actually forces a group to cooperate. Without asabiyya, there is simply no survival. Full stop. But with strong asabiyya, a group can conquer others and establish a massive, sprawling empire. It's basically the psychological and social glue of all human civilization.
But here's the catch. Asabiyya is not permanent.
It actually changes based on the environment. In a harsh, rural Bedouin life, people are focused entirely on bare necessities. Because their everyday life is so incredibly dangerous, they have to be brave, completely self-reliant, and fiercely loyal to one another. So their asabiya is extremely strong. However, flip over to sedentary urban life. Once that tough tribe conquers a city, they start focusing on luxury and comfort. They become complacent. They start relying on thick city walls and hired militias for defense instead of relying on each other. And consequently, their asabiya is severely weakened. This dynamic right here, the tough rural tribes inevitably conquering the soft urbanites, this is the fundamental engine of history.
Which leads perfectly into Section 4, the life cycle of empires, the human analogy.
Ibn Khaldun famously writes, "Dynasties have a natural lifespan like individuals, growth, maturity, and eventually senility." I mean, this is just a brilliant use of biology to explain high-level abstract politics. Just as a human being is born, grows strong, ages, and eventually passes away, so too does every single political state. No empire, no matter how powerful, escapes this biological reality.
He breaks this lifespan down into 4 totally inevitable, cyclical stages. Step 1. Conquest. A harsh, nomadic group armed with incredibly strong asabiya sweeps in and overthrows a weak, corrupt city-state. Then, Step 2. Consolidation. The new ruler decides, hey, I want absolute power. But to get it, he alienates his original tribe and starts hiring mercenaries who are loyal only to him. This begins the slow erosion of that crucial social cohesion. Next is Step 3, luxury. The dynasty enters a golden era of immense urban comfort, deep complacency, and dangerously high state spending. Finally, Step 4, senility. The state is just out of money and completely out of spirit. This leads to ruinous taxation just to fund the ruler's luxurious lifestyle, which eventually causes a total collapse when a new, tough desert tribe arrives at the gates. And then, the whole cycle just begins all over again.
Let's look closer at that financial decay in Section 5, economics and urbanization, wealth, labor, and taxation. To truly understand the senility phase of an empire, we really have to look at the economics. And this is wild. Centuries before modern European economists were writing about this, Ibn Khaldun formulated a labor theory of value. He argued that wealth isn't merely hoarding gold or silver. No, wealth is the direct result of human labor, cooperation, and the division of tasks. He noted that highly populated cities create a huge surplus of labor. This surplus goes way beyond just securing bare necessities, allowing for the creation of luxury goods, arts, and sciences. And that is what generates massive economic wealth. But that urban wealth creates a very dangerous trap. In the early days of a dynasty, rulers impose low tax rates on their subjects. This gives businesses a massive incentive to work hard, trade, and invest. And this booming economy actually results in massive total revenue for the state overall. But as the empire ages and the ruler's taste for extravagant luxury just explodes, they suddenly need way more money. So they impose exorbitant tax rates. Well, this completely destroys the citizens' incentive to work. Businesses close up shop, the economy shrinks, and ironically, total tax revenue plummets, leading directly to state collapse.
So the absolutely crucial point here is captured perfectly in this quote from the source. Oppression brings an end to human social organization, and the ruin of civilization leads to the ruin of the state. Unjust confiscation of property, unfair laws, and excessive taxation literally kill the economic drive of a society. Think about it. When people know the fruits of their hard labor are just going to be stolen by an oppressive state, they simply stop working. And when the economy dies, the state dies right along with it.
Which brings us to Section 6, Ibn Khaldun's modern legacy, a 14th century visionary.
Seriously, how does a scholar writing in 1377 North Africa hold up so incredibly well today? It's because his multifaceted genius spans major modern disciplines. In sociology, he basically founded the science of human social organization. In economics, he was developing theories on labor value, supply and demand, and the crippling effects of overtaxation long before modern textbooks even existed. And in historiography, he boldly stripped away the myth and demanded rigorous, logical, and scientific verification of historical accounts. The guy was just a pioneer.
To formally wrap up our explainer today, we really want to honor the original text with a quick summary of his core ideas in his native Arabic. First, al-Amran al-Bashrai, meaning human civilization is an absolute necessity. Second, asabiya, that social cohesion is the fundamental bedrock of power. Third, States go through biological phases just like humans do. And finally, al-adl, justice, is the ultimate foundation of civilization. Without it, ruin is a complete certainty.
And we're going to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought. Ibn Khaldun taught us that history is not just some straight line of endless upward progress. No, it's a biological cycle of rise, luxury, senility, and collapse. So, if all great states inevitably follow this cycle of decay, take a look around you today. Evaluate our modern economy, look at our current social cohesion, and examine our political structures. What stage of the life cycle is our own society in today? Something to think about, right? Thank you so much for watching. Keep questioning the world around you, and I will see you in the next explainer.